This is Idaho. Idaho is a 22-year-old quarter horse. He's been in the program for about 2 to 3 years. A unique characteristic about Idaho is the previous training that he had before he came to the program. He was trained in a certain type of horsemanship that makes the horse very responsive to weight shifts and cues. So he's very attentive to the rider and the handler. So here you can see as Justin's lunging him, the horse has got his inside ear turned towards Justin, which means that his inside eye is also watching Justin. So he's very aware of his handlers, which is something to take note of when you have kids that are really busy or needing a lot of input. This horse might not be the best just because he's just not going to handle those cues as well. Idaho also is a little bit narrower built. He travels with his front feet and his hind feet a little bit closer together. He doesn't have quite as big as strides, which means his feet don't go out in front of his nose or stay out behind his tail as much as the other horses. That's partly due to his age. You can also see in his back when he moves, his pelvis moves, but when it gets up into the mid-thoracic part of his back or the lumbar part of his spine, he's pretty rigid. So the movement that you're going to get for the riders isn't going to be a nice fluid forward movement. It's going to be more of an up-down staccato feeling. Justin, can you have him walk on just a little bit? Walk up. So that's Idaho's normal gait. As you ask him to speed up, he's going to drop his head and take longer steps with his hind end. There, so if you watch the length between his purple and green hind legs here, as he walks up, he's pushing more and driving more off of his hind legs. As he's going to the left, it's his green hind leg that's coming forward that pushes forward. So when you have a rider on a circle, it's their inside hind leg of the horse's back foot that's pushing up diagonally across, which increases the difficulty of maintaining balance. Good. If you could have Idaho trot. So this is Idaho's trot. It's a 2-beat gait, so the diagonal pairs, the purple and the green, are moving together. He's got a very bouncy stride. As you watch his legs, there's a lot of bounce to it, and it all goes through his legs because his back stays fairly rigid. So that's a very concussive ride. So it's good for riders that you want to have more input and less movement. Good, you can have him walk. Perfect, Dustin. I'll just have you walk at us. So when you take Idaho off of a circle, you'll notice his narrower frame as he walks at us. And as you see that, he's got a little bit of trunk sway, so his rib cage just goes in and out just a little bit as he walks. But for the most part, he's fairly anterior-posterior with his movement. He's got a good stride. His hind foot falls falling and his front foot falls. We'll just do a couple stops and starts, Justin, when you're ready. Idaho, because he's so observant, he's got a nice abrupt stop. So if you watch, he's good for that subtle cue where you want the rider to really have to correct their balance and use a lot of core muscle, because he's going to stop immediately. As the handler stops, he stops immediately. If you notice, he stops a little bit more on his front end than his hind end, which is okay. It's just his way of going. Also with Idaho, we have the ability to manipulate his gait and walk him over poles. So if we set him a little bit further apart, you can watch he's going to lengthen his stride and push a little bit more with his hind legs. Or if we shorten it, again, the stride becomes more upright. Taking him through cones, you're going to notice that Idaho stays a little bit straighter through his back. As he turns to the right, he pushes with his right hind foot, and as he goes to the left, he's going to push with his left hind foot, but he stays pretty straight through his back. He bends a little up near his withers and his thoracic, but he kind of guards himself and holds his spine fairly straight through his lumbar, which is all right if you want a rider that's going to have to be a little less challenged. He's just not going to have as much bend. Great, Justin. Thank you. So overall, Idaho is really good for an anterior-posterior ride. He's going to have a little less of the rotation, and he's also incredibly sensitive, so keep that in mind when selecting riders.